Hi everybody, it's JB Quick Coach, and today we want to talk about or focus on overeating. So if we were to ask someone who was in an overeating cycle, the 6 fundamental questions about mindful eating, and those 6 fundamental questions are: why do you eat? When do you eat? What do you eat? How do you eat? How much? And where? This is how they would basically answer. So when you ask why, your cycle drivers are triggers. That is to say, eating provides a temporary distraction or pleasure. For example, if the trigger is boredom, eating distracts you and gives you something to do for a little while. If the trigger is a big tray of brownies, eating several might be pleasurable for a few minutes, but then that feeling goes away. The distraction or pleasure is initially satisfying, and therefore it drives the overeating cycle. If you ask this person when, well, your desire to eat is triggered by conscious and unconscious physical, environmental, and emotional triggers. For example, physical triggers are things like thirst, fatigue, or pain. That might cause you to eat, but you really need to address what's causing it. Environmental cues are things such as the time of day, or an appetizing food tray in front of you in the lunchroom, or certain activities associated with food may trigger your urges to eat. So that might be a dinner party. And emotions such as stress or boredom, guilt, loneliness, anger, or happiness, there's a whole list of them. They can also trigger eating. And sometimes hunger triggers the initial urge to eat, but then environmental and emotional cues lead to overeating. Now, if you're in the habit of eating for all those reasons, when do you feel like eating? Well, all the time, basically. So the types of food you choose, what you're eating, is in response to triggers other than hunger. And it's more likely to be foods that are convenient, they're right there in the fridge, they're in the cupboard, they're tempting and comforting. You're not cooking, you're just grabbing and going. For example, if you're at a football game, you grab, maybe a jumbo pretzel and a hot dog, and then you go for the mini donuts right after. You're not hungry, you're just eating them. And if your trigger is stress, you might choose chocolate or potato chips. It's less likely you'll choose nutritious foods in your overeating cycle, since you're not eating in response to any real hunger, any real physical needs. How much are you eating? Well, in the overeating cycle, you're more likely to eat mindlessly, automatically, quickly, or secretly. You may eat or continue to eat whether you're hungry or not. So you might unconsciously grab a handful of candy or nuts from a bowl as you pass by, and you might eat while you're distracted, watching TV and driving, working, or talking on the phone. You might eat secretly or try to keep it away from someone else so they don't call you out on it. And you might feel guilty after eating, and therefore you aren't able to really fully enjoy it. Eating this way is not very satisfying physically or emotionally. How much? Well, if hunger doesn't tell you when to start eating, then it's certainly not going to tell you when to stop. So in an overeating cycle, the amount of food you eat depends on how much food you've been served or how much is in the package. You might eat until you feel bad or until you're interrupted. All too often you feel uncomfortably full, miserable, or even numb instead of content and satisfied after eating. And where? Well, when you eat food your body didn't ask for, your body has no choice but to store it. And it usually stores it as body fat. So you might feel self-conscious or less energetic, and as a result, you might not feel like being physically active even, because you have all this extra weight on you. So perhaps you avoid certain experiences like going on vacation or dating or buying new clothes, because you just want to lose the weight first. Perhaps you don't ask for that raise you deserve or set appropriate limits with other people. And that too can lead to even more emotional triggers and more overeating. So when you ignore your true needs and eat instead, you feel disconnected and out of control, for one thing. And when you eat for reasons other than hunger, the distraction and pleasure are only short-lived. They're only temporary, and consequently you have to eat more and more often to feel better. It just feeds the vicious cycle.